Hello and welcome to the Outlaws podcast with Kate and Shayla for professionals unlearning the rules of work and life. Ditch the shoulds and build what fits. Today we're talking about a word that stops a lot of people in their tracks: readiness. So many of us tell ourselves we'll make the move, have the conversation, apply for the role or ask for support when we feel ready. But ready is a slippery thing. How ready is ready enough? And how do you tell the difference between genuinely needing to prepare versus quietly hiding out in overthinking?
Our guest today is Lois Keay-Smith, a career counsellor, author and founder of Career Wisdom. She has nearly 2 decades of experience supporting people through career change and life transitions. Lois works with peak performers, executives, elite athletes, people navigating redundancy, and people facing life-altering health challenges. She's also a Churchill Fellow, Leadership WA Fellow, and someone who has spent her career sitting with people right at the edge of change. In this conversation, we unpack what readiness really looks like, why action often creates clarity rather than the other way round, and how to take the next step without burning it all down.
Lois, hello and welcome to the Outlaws podcast.
Thanks, Shayla. Thanks, Kate.
We're excited to have you. Tell us a little bit about you, Lois, and the work that you do.
Okay, well, where do I begin? I've been a career counsellor now actually for 20 years. So
Wow.
I started Career Wisdom 2005 and it's really grown over that time and I've seen a lot of change in the industry. But prior to that, I was actually in the finance industry. I always say the people side because I was corporate relations for the ASX. I worked for Australia's biggest super fund as a kind of representative and manager. So I've sort of done those kind of more front-facing type of relationship style roles and then decided to really not talk about money because it didn't really excite me that much. It was actually how did the people make their money? It was more about their livelihood. So I decided to go back to school, get a master's degree in career development and hang out my shingle, which is a whole story about readiness because I wasn't ready. Yeah, but I became ready.
That's the question that we would love to dig into with you, actually, because you've written that readiness is quite a tricky concept and a lot of clients will say to you, oh, we're not ready. We're not ready yet, not ready. And I think it's something we've all said over the years. I couldn't possibly do that, not ready. But what are they, in your experience, what are they usually actually saying? What does that really mean?
Yeah, it's a good question because what do they mean? You know, like I think sometimes when people say they're not ready to even contemplate looking at what they want to do next, that's something because there's kids and there's dogs and there's things, moving house and there's all these sort of big life events. So it's always something that is a bit gnarly and difficult. So it's easier to put off and it's easier to book a holiday because you can just pay, go, have a great time. And so, the thing about what do I want to do with my life is a big and gnarly question, which is why I always find it hilarious when people say, can I have a session? This massive thing. And you're kind of like, oh, we need a few more than that. So that's, I guess, one thing. But so sometimes it's like, I don't know where to start really is what they're saying. I'm not ready, but I actually don't know what I'm not ready for. And I don't know what I would need to do to get ready. So there's a lot of sort of discussion around that to start with, but there's usually something that's pushing them to actually go into this gnarly question. So sometimes they just need to put themselves first. So that readiness is because the kids are in front and partners in front and the family's in front and the aging parents are in front and everyone else is in front. But your livelihood and what you do and the meaning you derive from it is really, really important and it overflows into all those other areas. So sometimes that readiness is actually it's not simple, but putting yourself first. It's the oxygen mask, and then helping the others. So I think there's that aspect. The other thing is once we've actually done an exploratory piece of work with people, because they often come for, I've got too many ideas or I've got no ideas. So I have a process to take them through for that. But then when they're like, okay, I think I've got this thing or these things to test, then they're not ready sometimes. I think that is a bit of fear. It's a bit of having to put themselves out there, as we say. It's having to talk with people. All of the exploratory stuff's kind of fun and it's introspective and we dig and delve and we find values and strengths and all these wonderful things and we look at things and then we look at ideas and that's very dynamic and exciting and they come up with some zany ideas and some great ideas and we knock that out. And then it's the rubber meets the road. It's right. Who, not do you have anyone to talk with? It's like, who can we arrange maybe for you to have a chat with? And that can get a little bit confronting because suddenly it's real. It was behind closed doors and we were just sort of riffing, and then suddenly it's, oh,
Mm,
out in the world.
mm.
So I think that readiness can be a new skill set they need to learn. I work a lot with athletes, and on their next thing after sport when they
Right.
retire, and it's just like they're so accomplished and they're so amazing to work with. But sometimes there's new skill sets. When I worked years and years and years ago with rugby players, I'd say, how about having a coffee with someone to ask them about that profession? And they'd say, what, like a date? And I'd say, no, 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 no. Well, yeah, kind of like a
Yeah.
date, because it is. It's a copy date to ask. It's an informational interview. You've got questions you'll ask. So I think that readiness is sometimes I don't know what I don't know.
Mm.
What I do know scares me. There's other things that have suddenly taken my attention. And the other thing sometimes is that readiness or non-readiness translates into procrastination or doing other things that appear that
Mm.
they're getting ready. So classic one that both of you will be, I'm sure, familiar with, very, very intimately familiar with, is learning. And sometimes people call it procrasti-learning because, I need
Yeah.
another certificate, or I really need to know about
Yeah.
this, or I've actually got a list in my bullet journal of courses I want to do, and I write them in there before I buy them because invariably I look back and go, I don't even remember what that one was, but I really want to do them at the time. So many of us are very curious people, and we are, that's why we're wanting to answer this gnarly question. So we're wanting to discover more things, but that can be behind the screen work that doesn't necessarily move us forward.
Mm.
So
And
yeah,
I
it can be
feel
difficult.
like I wonder, we've had an episode this season on imposter syndrome, and
Mm,
part of that is, or sometimes how that shows up is perfectionism,
yes.
but also, not doing things unless you feel like you are absolutely ready to do it or have learnt all of the
Yeah.
things. And I think for professionals, who come from careers where there's a very high tendency, I suppose, for that perfectionist work, that everything has to be right, mistakes are no good. You can understand why people would go, well, I can't simply move into another career. I don't know anything about that career. And so, I better go and do some study. Whereas in fact, they often do, that lots of their
Of course.
skills that they're moving across, they do know those things. And there might be some elements that they don't do. But so
Yes.
I feel as though, yeah, it's a real, as you say, where it's like, oh, I'll go and do this. And then maybe after that, I might feel like
Mm.
I'm ready to do it. But I wonder if they ever do it.
Yeah, there's a lot of need the feel to be credentialed in some way, which of course comes because professionals are credentialed and they have their peak bodies and
Mm.
all those things. So I think there's a need to feel that you've got that rubber stamp or that you've done the right
Yeah.
thing, but it definitely can be just a way to delay the actual more uncomfortable things, because someone who's a professional, you've got a law degree, you've got through that whole big process, you're good at what you do and you're good at learning and you're good at applying learning. So it's natural to lean into that strength when you're thinking, oh, I want to go into this new field, I want to test this new field. So I would say just do a really quick and dirty course, or do a MOOC, a massive online open
Oh,
course.
yeah.
When you put MOOC and the topic, and you
Yeah.
get amazing things. I've had clients, have like Blue Ocean was one, and it was a Scandinavian country, I think, did this MOOC, and it was brilliant. So being able to do a deep dive quickly, pardon the
Mm.
pun with the ocean, but you can do that and learn enough to go, does this float my boat or not?
Right.
Is this good? So I think that's one thing.
Can you explain, for people that don't know what MOOCs are,
Yeah.
Lois, can you
Yeah.
explain what that is?
Yeah, so it's massive online open course, and they're generally produced by universities. They're almost like either a unit or even a series of units that you could essentially be doing the course. You're just not going to get the certificate at the
Mm.
end of it. If it's through Harvard or whatever, you're not going to get,
Yeah.
ta-da, you're a Harvard graduate. You're just going to have done that information. But I often encourage people to do these and then do put them on your resume for a particular role that you're going for. So if you've got no background in a new field, and you've got your qualifications, you list your qualifications maybe under educational qualifications, but then you can put training and educational or training courses, and then you can list these. And I love to see people get really creative with these. So thinking about, I'm going to move into a new space, I need to know something about cybersecurity, so I'm going to do that. Or I'm going to do some AI plus something else that's a little bit strange, that when it goes together, it's like a cocktail, and it captures people's eye and shows that you can pick up and assimilate information. And you're a little bit quirky. And I don't think that's a bad thing in the right context.
They're great. For some of them, you can get an actual certification. Either it's quite either low cost or no cost. But if you complete it and you complete the assessments, there is a certification you can get as well. So
absolutely, some of them do. Yeah, the micro credentials often offer, I think it's $30 or $60 or maybe more sometimes. But yeah, so you can get a digital certificate, and then you can upload that onto your LinkedIn if you wish to. So yeah, that's all available.
We've also talked on this podcast about like experimenting as well, and like trying different things. And I think that MOOCs are a really great way to do that, aren't they? To sort of go, oh, maybe I am interested in AI, or maybe I am interested in, I don't know, climate stuff or whatever. So you could go, let me go and do a course. Let me see what I think about it. I remember looking into some of them. And they seem to also have sort of some group or communities that you could engage with as well, which I think is really nice. Who will I meet? What conversations can I have? It's quite it feels like a pretty non-threatening way to be doing some experimenting and, do I like this or don't I?
Such a great idea too. I mean, because it's low stakes. It's a very minimal investment, but it will actually tell you fairly quickly whether this is something that is genuinely exciting you or not.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you can cross it off or you can keep going. I think though, with the danger, say if you come up with 3 top options and then you're going to do 3 different courses on those different options, you can go very far and deep down rabbit holes and you're still not really testing, I would say, in the real world. So I always encourage people to get out from behind the screens as well and mix it up, go to something live, or even go to a webinar or conference, but that's live online if it is online. Obviously seek out people to talk with about this potential area. And interestingly, so many people who do default to doing the courses, the credentials, they sort of go that way straight away. It's just a natural thing we've been taught to do. Having the conversations and coffee conversations or Zoom conversations with people and saying, okay, you're in this field, I'm looking at courses, you hire people in this field. What do you recommend? Because, oh my goodness, you could have spent $30,000 on a course and then they say, oh, we actually don't hire anyone from there because they lack this and this, but we like this one and it's actually free. But then you've add on the supervision or whatever it is, So I think that is like go to the horse's mouth, get that information, is really valuable. But ultimately we want to get them boot in a boot, as we say in Scotland.
Hey, excuse me, speaking of boot in the boot, George is asking to go out.
So out and about is what it is that you're saying there in your Scottish accent. And because listeners won't have heard that, we had a conversation between Kate and Lois, who discovered that they were both born in Scotland and came to Australia as young children.
And in fact, Lois is from where my dad's from. So
yeah. So that's the like, I'm not going to try and say that in a Scottish accent, whatever. Say it again in a Scottish accent.
What's
Oot
that?
And a boot. Oot and a boot. Oot and a boot. It means getting out and, so my Aussie accent, getting out and about.
Yeah.
But it can be, as simple as going to a panel thing, going to a peak body, association. I like to get a little bit innovative sometimes and help clients to work out not just what they want to explore, but who, as in, okay, I'm looking at these 3 areas or I've honed it into one area and I want to go deep dive on that. So what organizations are in that space? What's happening? What's on Eventbrite, Humanities, all those kind of things. So it's almost bringing it into their realm. And, but even if you go along to something that's public, sitting near the front, asking the questions, going up afterwards, introducing yourself, saying thank you, it's all the basic things, and then following up and then LinkedIn and all of those things. So it's really that lovely circle, which starts with out and about. I often say to my clients, other than the courier who might drop off a parcel, you may not see anyone all week, and that's hard. So we really want to fill their diary quite early, and I facilitate that often in terms. Connector is one of my top strengths, so I lean into that in terms of helping them work out who would be best for them. And obviously that's a bit of an exploration as well. But yeah, definitely getting out and about is really, really important rather than purely behind the screen, I think, for people to really test and feel.
But I must say, firstly, I do think we should be from now on referring to it as oot and a boot. Personally, that's
I say that on
right.
my newsletter. I say oot and a boot. I'll
Oot and
probably
a
put the
boot, and I
podcast
think
on there, oot and a
that
boot,
would
even
look
though it's
great
sort
on
of not.
absolutely. No, but I think that's going to look great
Yeah.
on a T-shirt. But do you find too people are generally pretty happy to chat to other people?
I think it's getting harder
Mm,
and it's also getting easier.
okay.
People are very busy.
Mm,
It needs to be a warm introduction wherever possible. And
right.
sometimes it's really interesting. You've got people that walk into a room and handle a mediation and calm and collected. And then you say, go talk to that person about, oh, I don't think I can do that. So it's really fun.
That's me for sure. That's me for sure. I feel like for
Yeah.
introverts,
Yeah.
could
Yeah.
anything be more mortifying? No.
Sure, yeah, and that's why, and also I'm a bit of an ambivert. It's probably the seven
Mm,
schools,
mhm,
Kate, and changing countries and having to fit into different
mhm,
cultures. But I definitely, if I can smooth the way, I always feel that's better because if there's some connection already, oh, we work together, or from school or whatever it is, that's always helpful. But I think also for introverts, using LinkedIn to your advantage. And I always say in my workshops, for my clients, I say, the best stuff on LinkedIn happens in the inbox, in the messages
Mm,
box on the
mm,
inbox, because it's just lovely to see the three heads, because there's me introducing Kate to Shayla, or Shayla to Kate, or like that sort of thing, and having a little message about them and why you're doing it. I feel like if it's well done, you've said this is what they're hoping to seek from you, or even if they reach themselves. It's like, I've been reading your posts, I've listened to all your podcasts,
yeah,
I've thought this was really interesting, this particular thing. I'm curious about X. Is there any chance I can come to your favorite coffee shop near when it's convenient to you and ask you a couple of questions, and I'll have them prepared? Now, if someone's that keen, they've listened to
mm,
everything, you're probably going to give them your time if you're a generous person and you have the
mm,
time. I feel like at the moment, sometimes people say no because we're teaching, have boundaries, don't say yes to everything. Guard your time so you can work on your projects, and then
mm,
suddenly you've got all these people wanting to talk to you. I guess, when it happens for me, I always say anyone who wants to come into the career profession, I'm always happy to give them some time. But I guess I hope they've done some research first, so
mm,
the more they demonstrate that. But that's the real skill builder, is helping
mm,
people with readiness to ask those questions and to meet people. And some of us are a bit rusty. We did
mm,
some networking maybe back in whenever we were getting our professional career started, and then thought, oh, that's not important anymore. It's important all the way along. Redundancies still happen and things happen in life, and
mm,
your network. I think, there's a book called Your Network is Your Net Worth. And I feel like if you ever had to start again from scratch, maybe being generous enough to help other people and send that elevator down, as we say, that,
yeah.
that you can then call on other people. I
mm,
do have people say, oh, but I haven't been in touch with them look, we're all like that because we're all super busy. And I think there's a certain number of people you can kind of almost hold space for. The rest are on
Mm.
LinkedIn, or
right,
they're on Facebook, or they're on whatever, like they're around in the ether. So I think showing up to things obviously helps, but also, yeah, just graciously asking and thanking and being good human and hoping that comes back around.
yeah,
I think
Yeah,
it's the way to
absolutely.
tackle that.
Just going back to the perpetual student idea,
Yeah.
just to, I guess, round that idea out, how do you, when you see that, perpetual students and they're telling you they're doing this so that they can get ready and they're doing that and it seems to go on, how do you gently challenge someone who's,
Mm.
learning, planning, preparing, but never actually starting?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I often get them to revisit their strengths and what energizes them. And obviously, love of learning is there, but how could they translate that love of learning to maybe even teaching it,
Mm,
or getting amongst a group of people? So again, it's that connection point. I think we talk about return on investment a lot. So, okay, you're going to do that course. How much? Oh, it's only this much. Okay, but and what hours? Oh,
mm,
mm,
opportunity cost is always an interesting one, isn't it? You could start this website and this blog and this new thing and this new service and charge for it. Or you could do this $60,000 course, or
yeah.
even if it was a $5,000 course, but it's going to be hours and hours and hours, and then you've got to credit, and then you've got to do more hours, and like it goes on and on and on and on. And I think I'm not really an education cynic. I mean, I've got a master's degree. My dad's a retired academic. I'm an engineer, but I'm also I look with open eyes at those sorts of things, and they're selling you a course. So often when people are investigating, I'll be saying go and actually eyeball the people and who's running it and that kind of thing. So be a really good consumer and ask the right questions, because usually they say, oh yeah, I love learning, I could just learn. But it's like, well, how do you want to translate that into something that can move you forward? Kate, I know you're in the learning space. So that's a great example where you translate it. And then Shayla, with coaching, there's a way that you can flip that and use it. And it's great because it's tax deductible.
Yeah.
But I
Those
think it's giving
two
yourself
magic words.
a time, giving yourself, as I say, I write it down. I write these courses down that I want to do because there's a lot of them that I come across. And then I say, I go back to that list, and most of them have fallen away because I've moved on. I'm not the same person when I was going to do them. And that's the problem we have now. You roll in a 2-3 year course, a 1 year course. Is it going to be current? Is it going to be relevant?
Yeah.
What's the return on investment? What are you not doing with your family and all your other important values while you do that? So I think it's just a little pause really to let the person think about all those things. And then is that the right course? Have you talked to anyone who actually hires in your space? I really like them to speak to people early in the piece, and that's why Oot and a Boot is a thing, because invariably that changes everything. One conversation,
Right.
Really does.
we've got this perfect idea and it's all beautiful and it's up there on the wall. It's like a little trophy.
Yeah.
10 courses thinking about it. And then, of course, you talk to one person and here, sometimes you get dumped on, and it's not necessarily, you need to double check and, like put it through your filter as well. But sometimes you're just like, oh, I didn't think of that aspect. Oh, but then you talk to the next person and then something completely different emerges from that conversation or connection. So I think it's a really funny thing because people are trying to get ready for something, but the thing they're getting ready for is actually very different. It's going to be morphing and changing, and we're in a time that's even more so. So it's really just getting started and letting it go. It's like impromptu. It's kind of like, that's the stage you have to step on, and there's a prop there, and what time, but everything else is random. There was a show, I think it was Thank God You're Here.
Yes.
I don't know if
yeah.
you saw that. It's brilliant. This is like that often. You do have some parameters, there's some framework. I take people through a process. It's sort of a guided through, but there's a point where they do have to go, oh yeah, I need to find out more, and I need to engage. I need to engage with this thing and wrestle with it a little bit and see if it has legs. And that's where I feel we go sometimes too cerebral too early. We try to nut this out, think this out. I read 20 books on careers before deciding to become a career counsellor, and there weren't many of us back then 20 years ago. And I don't advocate that because it took 2 years. It was slow and, had lots of ups and downs in it and that sort of thing. Too slow. So I advocate, a process that takes you faster through that, but you're still going to get to that messy middle, and you're still going to go, I don't know what I'm doing this week. And I often my clients to use that term of exploration. So if you do go to something, people say, oh, so what are you doing, Kate? You can say, oh, well, I've just been X or left whatever, just really tiny on that. And then, oh, at the moment, I'm actually exploring, and what's catching my eye at the moment is, and it might be relevant to the meeting that you're at there, so that you can then talk to them about it. So that exploration, but we can't explore forever, can we?
No.
Our suitcase gets ratty and we have to come home. So yeah. So I guess it is seeing where those pieces lead, and leaning into strengths, which are not just like part of your makeup of what you could do because you've got these particular strengths, but using those top ones where possible to move you forward. So if you've got a great strength of strategic awareness, great, use that to go, right, who's who in Perth, do a map, stick it on the wall, start contacting different people. You'll be there really quickly. So I think people tend to pick up speed and get wherever they're going faster when they lean into those strengths. But we do that early in the piece, and sometimes they sort of forget that. They go, oh, they're my strengths, put them on the wall, look at them occasionally, a bit like values. But actually, no, they're living and breathing, because if you're good at certain things, you'll go farther, faster using those.
Yes, right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And especially if they're relational ones, even more so.
So readiness can be a luxury, right? I mean,
Oh,
you
yes.
also work with people where life, for a range of reasons, forces change, might be ill
Yeah.
health or redundancy or something. How does readiness show up a bit differently when change is forced upon you, rather
Yeah.
than when it's a choice?
Yeah. I have a quote for you.
Great. We love quotes.
Love a quote. As if you haven't given us as if you haven't given us enough with oot and a boot, but
Oh, Oot and a Boot,
oot and a boot.
that's a T-shirt. That's got its own genre. But this one is Henry Kissinger. It is the absence of alternatives clears the mind marvelously.
Nice.
So when you've got nowhere else to go, or you've got to just make a decision quickly because you've had a cancer diagnosis or you've had a
Mm,
redundancy or whatever the case may be, suddenly those decisions that, yeah, the privilege of, I call it languishing. Oh, what can I do? There's a bit of navel gazing. We can laugh at ourselves because those of us who maybe have socked away some savings and done that. When I was moving into my new career, I actually had been at my firm for 5 years. So I had pro rata long service leave. So I
oh,
used that to get my logo, go on a quick break, do some things, and then I was out there. So yeah, so there's definitely privilege in having a bit of time or space, or maybe with your household situation, whatever it might be. But I think sometimes we waste that. So we navel gaze and we do the courses and we sort of convince ourselves we've got lots of time.
Mm,
Whereas the person who's received news of a not great nature that then makes them think, oh my goodness, I have to really do this now. That sharpens their focus, as the quote suggests.
mm,
And they're just, they're more motivated, but I think also they don't faff around.
right.
yeah.
They actually go, what is highest value here? Like if we talk about things to do, I think people that have time and are sort of secure, we'll pick the fun things. Oh, I'm going to do
Mm,
a course. Oh, I might go to that conference in Noosa.
yeah.
It's tax deductible. I'll learn a lot, and it'll be great. Whatever. So as they're moving into something, they can do that. But I think the person who's saying, right, what's going to be the best option here for the fastest move to the best for me, fits my values. That they're really intent on that. And a question that is great to ask in that environment is, sharing with people what's going on for you, not in a big, huge way, but just saying, hey, this has happened. What I'm doing now, I'm exploring this and I'd like to move into this area, and seek their help, but also say, Kate, if you were me, who else would you be seeking to talk with?
That's a great question, isn't it?
Mm,
Yeah. Not, do you know anyone?
Mm,
mm,
Oh, I'll let you know if I know of anyone. No, it's like
yeah,
this particular thing. Who do
yeah,
you know? Your brain file of
yes,
facts goes, or a Rolodex goes,
yeah,
blah, 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 blah.
yeah, yeah.
And then, of course, if that's forthcoming, you can say, is there any chance you could connect me?
Mm,
So
yeah,
it's
right.
learning these little scripts. It sounds maybe a little bit like, oh, do you really need to learn a script? Yes.
yeah.
Yeah,
I used to work with Red Kite, which was the cancer charity, amazing cancer charity. And I worked with 15, 24-year-olds for a little while. And I had a young man and he was going for his first job. And we wrote it out
yeah.
and he practiced it
Mm,
with me. So again, that kind of improv thing, but
Mm,
you can still have your cards if you
right.
need them.
But it's just
Yeah.
that little switch in language, though, which you're saying there is so
Yes.
powerful because
Yes.
there's
Who?
some questions you can ask which are kind of open ended. It means an answer may or may not ever come, but
That's
just
right.
reframing it in that way is a small thing, but it's a very powerful shift to get an
Yeah.
answer or to get a piece of information that allows you kind of to move on to the next step and just start gathering the information or sort of I always tend to think of it and I say that certainly to students a lot is if they're wondering what way or what way they want to go. I sometimes sort of liken it to sort of scattering seeds.
Yes.
You're sort of
Which
putting
ones take off?
yeah, and some are going to germinate and some aren't. But sometimes it's just about trying. Well, and it really is. It's like trying all the different things, making connections. Because again, I think also too, sometimes you just never know where that next step is going to come from. So you scatter the seeds without really knowing where the sort of the magic happens, right? In terms of
Yeah.
that one person just happens to be looking for someone who, and actually you might be a great fit. And
Yeah.
whereas you don't necessarily know when you do that which ones are going to take, but
So true. Yeah,
yeah,
so true. And that's where when you get hyper planning people, and bless them because we need them in our society, don't we? Like, like risk assessment,
Right.
plan, spreadsheet on spreadsheet, all of that good stuff. We need that, but we also need that ability to go with the flow and allow serendipity. And I know you've used that word a few times in the podcast, which is awesome. There's a career theory called planned happenstance that I love, because there is the planful part. So, I need to see someone from these 3 areas, and I want to talk to this person and that organization if I can get in there. So you've got some activities planned, but the happenstance is someone saying, "Hey, do you want to go to this Festival of Perth thing? I've got a free ticket," and you're thinking, "Oh, I've got to get a babysitter. I've got to," a million things go through your head that it's a no, but something makes you go, "Boot in a boot. Yes, I'll go." You're there at the drinks thing, whatever, and then you introduce someone. Go with the connector. They know everybody.
Yeah.
You're standing there and they'll go, "Hello, hello, hello." You'll be introduced. Now, sometimes we let that go because it was only brief, but of course your friend's saying, "Oh, that person's blah, 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 blah." Send them a LinkedIn on Monday morning or Tuesday morning saying, "Hey, it was lovely to briefly meet you." So I think these things do generate opportunity, and they're not planned. So some of them are planned, some of it's happenstance, but the two are a bit like a dance, like you've got to be out in the world. And, I think some of the misunderstanding, I think sometimes it comes through of try lots of things, is an undisciplined try lots of things. And I actually think that's great advice if you're 16 and 17, within reason. Try lots of good things. But when you're 35, 45, whatever, 55, you've got less time. So I think that's why a process that then hones you in a bit for the moment, but still may end up somewhere completely different. It just helps you focus, and then you can ask people, "Well, who do you know in this area?" So that's the thing. People who are work seeking, they'll say, "I'm looking for a job. Let me know if you know of anything, hear of anything."
Yeah.
Okay, when I hear of anything, I'll call you.
Yeah.
So, "Hey, I'm between jobs at the moment. What I'm looking for is ideally ... So we're working on crafting that. And then, of course, the person can go, "You know what? That sounds familiar. I'm going to check into that and get back to you." So you've really honed them in. So I think that readiness is about, it's knowing enough of what you have to say to drop it into the conversation, and it
Yeah.
stays in people's brains. It's like their little brainworm or earworm. They're going
No,
to remember you.
that's really good advice, I think, because those conversations can feel really uncomfortable. And so I think it's really good to have some scripts.
So, Lois, from your work, what would you say is the one small thing you've seen create a sort of a disproportionate clarity for someone who's feeling stuck?
Yeah, invariably it's never one small thing, but I would definitely say the insight into the strengths they have that energize them.
Mm.
And in saying that, the ones that are maybe a little bit, if I'm working with athletes on the bench, that the strengths that are on the bench not getting used, or sometimes work with ballet dancers in the wings, So it's those strengths that are just, they're sort of latent, but they're really energizing. And if they can actually start using them and focus in on them. But I think the other part is where people don't necessarily just go cerebral with their career exploration and try to nut it out, work it out, which of course a lot of professionals do because that's their success. So in a way that is their strength. But the missing link I have seen that's made amazing strides is when they link that into how they feel in their body. And I know you've been talking a little bit about other modalities and things like that, but I feel like that's often the missing link. They're trying to nut it out, work it out. There's a whole world out there that's changing. They're changing. So really getting what's resonant for them. So
Yeah.
getting them really focused in on what's right for them, not what everyone else is doing.
Yeah. Do you are athletes better at that just than professionals? Because I guess they literally work with the body.
Yeah, athletes are amazing. Athletes have some very distinct advantages because they focus. They've had coaches from a very, very young age, and they can take on feedback. So they are, just, streets ahead in some ways, but the identity part is huge, and leaving that or changing that and learning new skills like we were talking about earlier around gaining connections or asking for things, that can be hard. And in some professional sport environments, a lot of spoon feeding's happened for a long time as well. So, learning those new skills and actually pushing forward can be challenging for them as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Lois, thank you so much. This has been such a great chat.
Thank
And
you.
I think, this topic of feeling ready, I think is just so relevant for everyone really in
Yeah.
their careers. Because I don't think, well, there's not that many people that, go, right, I'm ready, and then just kind of
Yeah.
start doing all the things. There's so many
Yeah.
things that stop people. So it's really great to have
So true.
an episode on this. So, yeah, thank you so much for joining us. And we will share links to your business career wisdom if people want to be able to find you as well.
Fantastic. Thanks, Kate. Thanks, Shayla.
Thank you
Awesome
so much.
discussion.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for oot and a boot.
May you get oot and a boot.
Wow. Well, Shayla, we get some amazing people on this podcast.
We
I don't know how we do it / you do it actually, most of it, but wow.
It's such
So
an
much
interesting
wisdom.
topic, I think, readiness, because
Right.
what is ready?
Yeah.
Like how do people decide when they're ready? I think
Right.
it's just a good question to ask yourself, like how will I know if I'm ready? And I think invariably the answer is, oh, when I feel ready, but
Mm.
there's maybe not such a thing.
How do you know, I'm so sorry. I know I do this all the time, but when you were like, how will I know? And then I wanted to go, if
How
you
will I
really love
know?
me.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Song. Yeah, always a song.
The one thing, and I didn't ask Lois, and I think I do know the answer to this too, is there a gender aspect to that too? Because I think there are studies, or I've seen it somewhere, that often for women particularly, they will not apply for something until they
Yeah.
feel they can actually already do it, which is kind of not the right way to deal with it really, because you can't do it if you haven't done it. But that men are much more likely to give it a go and
Yeah. Yeah,
apply
no,
before I feel completely ready.
there's definitely research around that. And I think, you know, you should develop in positions that you start, the
Yeah,
idea that you would go into a position and know every single thing about what
right.
that position is, why would you almost do something that you
Mm.
already
Yeah,
know everything about? Like, surely you want to continue
right.
developing in your skills.
Ooh,
So, but that's challenging for people to go, oh, well, I
yeah,
don't tick every single box on all of the selection criteria and therefore
right.
I can't apply. So I
Yeah.
think it's a good question for people to just say to themselves, if I'm thinking I'm not ready, why do I feel like that?
Mm,
What is going to get me to feeling ready? But to really challenge themselves about
mm.
maybe I just need to do it to feel ready.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
also too, I loved, so much. That was such a great conversation. So many great things from our talk with Lois. But that notion of just doing some MOOCs. If you think, don't do a
Yeah,
whole
exactly.
course, actually just do a MOOC. They're really low stakes. You can get them, if you Google, and it's capital M, capital O, capital O, capital C. There's lots, Harvard, Stanford do some
Yeah,
really, really
there's
good
very
ones.
prestigious
Yeah,
universities do a lot of really great MOOCs. I was very
yeah,
surprised when I started looking at them.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I
really,
think
really
that's
good.
a really great idea.
And then but do it.
Just do it. Just
Just
do
do
it.
it. Oh, that would make a great,
Slogan
yeah, we should
It
go into marketing.
might be taken. Yeah.
Yeah, you might want to Google search that one before
Yeah.
we yeah.
Well, yeah, thank you to Lois for joining
Thank
us
you.
today. If you've liked the episode, Outlaws, give us a like, drop us an email,
Yeah.
or say hello on social media.
Absolutely, and don't forget to get oot and a boot as much
Yeah.
as possible, because that's
Yeah.
actually where I do think the magic / serendipity happens,
No,
just
I
by
think you're right.
talking to people.
Yeah, certainly.
Easier for some of us than others, but
That's true.
mm.
Have a great week, Kate.
You too. Thanks, Shayla.
Bye.